Welcome back to SoilSage Chronicles, fellow garden enthusiasts. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that hits close to home for many of us, those seemingly innocent gardening habits that are silently sabotaging our beloved plants. You know the feeling. You've invested time, money, and endless love into your garden, only to watch your green friends struggle despite your best intentions. I've been there too. In fact, some of my most valuable gardening lessons came from spectacular failures. Remember that collection of hydrangeas I tried to grow in my west-facing garden bed last summer? Total disaster. But every wilted leaf and stunted stem taught me something crucial about what our plants truly need. In this article, I'll share the 5 deadliest gardening mistakes I've both witnessed and personally committed over my years of getting my hands dirty. More importantly, I'll walk you through how to correct these issues and transform your garden from surviving to thriving. Let's turn those plant tragedies into triumph together. If there's one mistake I see more often than any other in both beginner and experienced gardens, it's the tendency to love our plants to death with too much water. I can't tell you how many times I've had viewers send me photos of yellowing, droopy plants asking what's wrong, only to discover they've been watering daily just to be sure. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Overwatering kills more houseplants and garden plants than underwatering ever will. When we constantly saturate the soil, we're essentially drowning the roots, depriving them of oxygen they desperately need. This creates the perfect environment for root rot and fungal diseases to take hold. The signs of overwatering are often mistaken for underwatering, which leads to a devastating cycle. Yellowing leaves, wilting despite wet soil, moldy soil surface, and a general lack of vigor are all crying out that your plant is getting too much moisture. What makes this particularly tricky is that a plant struggling from overwatering often looks like it needs, you guessed it, more water. Instead of sticking to a rigid watering schedule, learn to check your soil moisture. Push your finger about an inch into the soil. If it feels damp, hold off on watering. Different plants have vastly different water requirements, so research your specific varieties. My desert natives like lavender and rosemary prefer to dry out completely between waterings, while my ferns and tropical plants need consistent moisture. Consider investing in a moisture meter if you're struggling to gauge soil dampness. And remember, it's better to underwater slightly than to overwater. Plants can often recover from drought stress, but root rot is much harder to come back from. During my first years of gardening, I made the classic mistake of thinking that all soil is created equal. I'd buy whatever was cheapest at the garden center and wonder why my vegetables produced meager harvests or why my flower beds never quite burst with the vibrancy I was expecting. The truth is, soil isn't just dirt. It's a complex ecosystem that forms the literal foundation of your garden's success. Many gardeners are working with soil that's depleted of nutrients compacted from foot traffic, lacking beneficial microorganisms, or simply unsuited to the plants they're trying to grow. When you plant directly into poor quality soil, you're essentially asking your plants to thrive in a hostile environment. It's like trying to run a marathon while wearing lead boots. Technically possible, but unnecessarily difficult and unlikely to yield impressive results. The solution begins with understanding your soil type. Is it clay-heavy and prone to compaction, sandy and quick draining? A simple soil test can reveal not just the composition, but also the pH and nutrient levels. These tests are available at most garden centers or through your local cooperative extension office. Once you understand what you're working with, you can amend accordingly. For most garden beds, incorporating organic matter like compost, well-rotted manure or leaf mold will dramatically improve soil structure and fertility. I make it a habit to add a 2 to 3 inch layer of compost to my beds every spring and fall, and the difference in plant health is remarkable. For container gardens, don't cut corners on potting mix. A high-quality potting medium provides the drainage, aeration, and nutrient retention that container plants need. I learned this lesson the hard way after watching my container herbs struggle in garden soil that became brick-like within weeks. Remember that soil health isn't a one-and-done effort, it's an ongoing relationship. Regular additions of organic matter, careful management of foot traffic, and practices like cover cropping or mulching all contribute to a living soil that will nurture your plants for years to come. One of the most heartbreaking gardening mistakes I see is when gardeners fall in love with a particular plant and try to force it to grow in conditions it simply can't tolerate. I've been guilty of this myself. That collection of shade-loving hostas I insisted on planting in my sunniest garden bed comes to mind. Despite my determination and excessive watering, they scorched and struggled until I finally relocated them to a woodland garden where they immediately perked up. This right plant, wrong place syndrome stems from our emotional attachment to certain plants, and sometimes from a lack of research before purchasing. We see a gorgeous specimen at the garden center and bring it home without considering whether our garden can provide what it needs to thrive. Every plant has evolved to flourish in specific conditions. Some need full sun, others prefer dappled shade. Some thrive in slightly acidic soil, while others need alkaline conditions. Some can handle wet feet, and others need perfect drainage. The solution is twofold. First, take the time to assess your garden's conditions honestly. Map out your sun patterns throughout the day, get that soil test I mentioned earlier, and note areas that tend to stay wet or dry out quickly. Second, research plants before you buy them, focusing on their specific requirements rather than just their beauty. This doesn't mean you have to give up on plants you love. If you're determined to grow something that doesn't naturally suit your conditions, consider modifying your garden environment. Create raised beds for better drainage. Install shade cloth for sun-sensitive plants, or plant acid lovers like blueberries in containers where you can control the soil pH more easily. Remember that plants forced to grow in unsuitable conditions will always be stressed, making them more susceptible to pests and diseases. A plant grown in its preferred environment will not only survive, but thrive, requiring less intervention and maintenance from you. When it comes to feeding our plants, many gardeners operate on the principle that if a little fertilizer is good, more must be better. This is a dangerous misconception that I've watched damage countless gardens, including my own early attempts at supercharging my vegetable patch. Over-fertilizing creates a host of problems. Excess nitrogen can stimulate lush foliage at the expense of flowers and fruits. Fertilizer salts can build up in the soil, burning delicate root systems. And the quick flush of growth from chemical fertilizers often produces weak, leggy plants more susceptible to diseases and pests. The signs of over-fertilization are often subtle at first, perhaps unusually rapid growth or exceptionally dark green leaves, but can progress to leaf burn, wilting despite adequate water, and a white crust on the soil surface. If you're seeing these symptoms, it's time to reconsider your feeding regimen. Instead of reaching for the fertilizer at the first sign of plant distress, take a more holistic approach. Many plant problems are not caused by nutrient deficiencies, but by improper watering, poor light conditions, or pest issues. Address these fundamental care aspects first before assuming your plants need more food. When you do fertilize, follow package directions precisely and err on the side of diluting rather than concentrating. Consider switching to organic, slow-release fertilizers that feed plants gradually and help build soil health, rather than providing a quick but potentially harmful nutrient surge. In my own garden, I've found that a compost-centered approach to fertility, supplemented with occasional organic fertilizers based on specific plant needs, produces the healthiest, most resilient plants. It's not about forcing rapid growth, it's about supporting your plant's natural growth patterns. One of the most costly mistakes I see gardeners make, and I've been guilty of this myself, is what I call pest and disease denial. It's that moment when you notice a few holes in your kale leaves or some powdery residue on your zucchini, but tell yourself, it's probably nothing, or it'll clear up on its own. This wishful thinking gives pests and diseases exactly what they need to establish a foothold in your garden. By the time you can't ignore the problem anymore, it's often become so severe that drastic measures are required, measures that might have been avoided with early intervention. Early detection is your most powerful tool in managing garden problems. Make it a habit to inspect your plants regularly, checking both the tops and undersides of leaves, examining stems, and occasionally even inspecting the root systems of plants that aren't performing well. Look for discoloration, unusual growth patterns, holes, sticky residues, and any insects, both the pests and the beneficial predators. Garden journaling can be invaluable here. Noting when problems first appear can help you anticipate and prevent them in future seasons. When you do spot an issue, identify it accurately before taking action. Many gardeners make the mistake of reaching for broad-spectrum pesticides at the first sign of trouble, potentially harming beneficial insects while not effectively addressing the specific problem. Resources like your local extension office, reputable gardening websites, and garden mentor programs can help you identify issues and choose the most appropriate, least toxic solution. Remember that an integrated pest management approach using cultural practices, physical barriers, biological controls, and only as a last resort, chemical interventions, will create a healthier garden ecosystem over time. In my own garden, I've found that building healthy soil, choosing resistant varieties, practicing crop rotation, and encouraging beneficial insects has dramatically reduced pest and disease problems compared to my early years of gardening reactively. We've covered a lot of ground today, fellow gardeners, but I want to leave you with perhaps the most important gardening lesson I've learned. Every mistake is an opportunity to become a better caretaker of your plants. The gardeners I admire most aren't those with picture-perfect landscapes who've never lost a plant. They're the ones who've killed plenty of plants along the way but have learned something valuable from each experience. They've developed that intuitive understanding of what their plants need that only comes from making mistakes and paying attention to the results. So if you've recognized yourself in any of the mistakes we've discussed today, don't be discouraged. Instead, see it as a chance to deepen your gardening knowledge and build a more resilient garden moving forward. I'd love to hear about your own gardening challenges and successes in the comments section below. What plant-killing mistakes have taught you the most valuable lessons? And if you're currently struggling with any of the issues we've discussed, ask your questions. Our SoilSage Chronicles community is always here to help. If you found this article helpful, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing this video with other gardeners in your life. Together, we can build a community of thoughtful, observant gardeners who learn from each other's successes and setbacks. Until next time, happy gardening from your fellow soil sage, where every withered leaf teaches us something new about the magnificent journey of growing things.